India and Pakistan have revoked all visas for each other's nationals as diplomatic relations hit rock bottom. Militants gunned down 26 civilians in Indian-administered Kashmir on Tuesday. Delhi accuses Pakistan of supporting cross-border terrorism, something Islamabad denies. India is expelling diplomats and has closed the main border crossing to Pakistan, as well as scrapping an historic resources deal.
Anger on the streets of Pakistan. These Muslim activists are protesting against India's response to the attack in Kashmir. In particular, Delhi's decision to suspend a crucial water-sharing treaty.
Rivers around the world can pass through as many as 10 countries, and all those countries have rights over them. India has built illegal dams before, and now it has announced an end to the Indus Water Treaty. We believe this is an open declaration of war.
The government has also said any attempt by India to stop the supply of water from the river will be deemed, quote, an act of war. It's just one of a raft of measures taken by Delhi to punish Pakistan, which it blames for the killings. India has also closed the main border crossing between the two countries, and it has cancelled visas for Pakistani nationals, a move now reciprocated by Islamabad as part of its retaliatory moves. The Indian Prime Minister has said no effort would be spared in bringing the attackers to justice. His message in English.
I say to the whole world, India will identify, track and punish every terrorist and their backers.
Police released sketches of 3 suspects it said were involved in the attack. They claimed 2 of the men were Pakistani, although they failed to disclose how they had been identified. Families of the victims are still burying their loved ones. One eyewitness described how one of the gunmen ordered Hindus and Muslims to stand separately before opening fire on the Hindus, one of whom was her husband.
There were 6 to 7 men with us. He shot all of them. He fired at them from such proximity that everything was over within minutes. All this happened in front of us. My husband's head was on my lap, and my children were beside me, but I could not do anything to save him.
As survivors continue to suffer, all eyes are on India and Pakistan. For now, their moves against each other appear largely symbolic. But the fear is that the situation could escalate, despite the desire for peace.
Beenish Javed is here in the studio with me again. She has the latest on the Pakistani response. But first, let's go to Delhi, where our correspondent Shalu Yadev is standing by. Shalu, strong words there from Modi. What is he hoping to achieve?
Yes, Gerhard, strong words and strong posturing from Prime Minister Narendra Modi just a day after India downgraded its diplomatic ties with Pakistan. Now, apart from the strong words, what really stood out from his speech was his choice of language. Prime Minister rarely speaks in English, even on international platforms like the UN or the G20. Here, he chose English over Hindi. Usually, he uses Hindi in his speeches. So I think this is being seen as an attempt to send a message to the world about about how serious India is and in its resolve to fight terrorism, which it often blames on terror outfits that are based out of Pakistan, and even accuses the Pakistani government of supporting them. Now, we've seen expression of solidarity by leaders from the US, from Israel, from Russia in the last 2 days, and India wants to build on that, Gerhard, because this downgrading of diplomatic ties, this is being seen as just the beginning of the retaliatory measures, and some are fearing a military escalation too. And if it comes to that, India is going to need its allies to stand by it.
Some strong steps from India there that initiated this tit for tat, but equally strong diplomatic reaction from Pakistan, right?
Yeah, Gerhard, today's Pakistan's top security body, the National Security Committee, issued very strong statement. First of all, it denied any role in the attack. It also called Indian action against Pakistan as unilateral. unjust, and actually blamed India of fomenting terrorism. And we know that India has denied these accusations. Pakistan also went on to suspend trade, bilateral accords, and airspace with India. But one of the major moves is Pakistan suspending the 1972 Simla Agreement. Gerhard, that's the agreement that mandates Pakistan and India to peacefully negotiate, peacefully resolve any conflict, and also to respect each other's sovereignty. Pakistan has also, like India, cancelled visas of Indian nationals with the exception of Sikh pilgrims. What I would say is a strong statement coming out of Pakistan is that Pakistan has said that any attempt by India to shut Indus River supply will be considered as an act of war. We know that yesterday India announced that it's suspending the Indus Water Treaty. And Gerhard, that's an important treaty between the two countries that has survived a lot of diplomatic turbulence, even wars and conflicts. That treaty always remained between the two countries. And just so that you know that Pakistan relies heavily on the water that flows from India. Roughly around, there are some estimates that 90% of Pakistan's agriculture depends on the water that flows from India, and therefore Pakistan has called it, has reacted so strongly.
Now, you already mentioned it, but the word war has already crept into the communication between these two countries. How close is this diplomatic row, which it is at the moment, to boiling over into conflict?
If we look at past in 2016 and also in 2019, when there have been militant attacks in Indian-administered Kashmir, India has blamed Pakistan of those attacks. And in the past, we have seen in 2016 and 2019, India retaliated. India carried out military action against Pakistan. And this time, Pakistan has said that if India carries out an attack, Pakistan will retaliate, and that is not a good thing because both countries are nuclear-armed countries, and there is a real risk that if both countries, if there's an escalation between two countries, the South Asian region can plunge into a crisis which will affect more than 1 billion people.
Back to you, Shalu, there in Delhi. This row has really escalated very quickly in the last few hours alone. Are there people in India calling for calm?
Well, largely and naturally, there's a huge amount of anger amongst most Indians, and there's a considerable amount of domestic pressure on the Hindu nationalist government of Narendra Modi to retaliate in strong terms. But that said, there are people who are calling for calm and diplomacy. Now, Gerhard, usually what happens often in these kind of situations after such attacks, you see hate speeches against Pakistanis, against Kashmiris, and Muslims at large picking up on social media, and then it also leads to tensions on the ground. Now, for an example, today we saw some reports of Kashmiri students and Kashmiri youth being attacked in different parts of the country. They were targeted by physical assaults or threats. And also, just to give you a little peek into what's happening in Indian living rooms right now, large number of messages are circulating in local WhatsApp groups, including my own resident welfare group, wherein there's a clamor for extreme measures against terrorists, but also saying that Indian Hindus are in danger from Muslims at large. But many people are putting in a word of caution as well, that this is exactly what the attackers, what the terrorists want, a divided India where the communities are fighting each other instead of coming together and fighting terrorism. And we should not fall for that, say a lot of people here.
Shalu Yadev in Delhi and Beenish Javed here in Berlin. Thank you both very much.
And I want to cross over now to Ajai, Sahni, Executive Director of the Institute for Conflict Management in Delhi. It's good to have you with us. India's Prime Minister declared Kashmir a safe region. So it begs the question, how could a major terror attack like this happen there?
That was not a security assessment. That is essentially political posturing. And political language is basically given to boastfulness and exaggeration. We've had 127 fatalities relating to terrorism last year in Jammu and Kashmir, and more in each preceding year for the last 3 or 4 years. certainly. So I think that was meant for domestic audiences. That was meant for an electoral constituency. It was not an objective security assessment. Terrorism is alive and well in Jammu Kashmir. It is not at a scale proceeding. You may talk about a very dramatic sort of decline in terrorism. At peak, we had 4,011 fatalities in a single year, 2001. So from there to 127 fatalities is very close to normalcy, but it is by no means peace.
Would you say that India's punitive measures against Pakistan have gone too far?
I don't think they've even begun. Everything that we have done till now is essentially symbolic. There is some implicit threat in this suspension of the River Waters Treaty, but that is not something that can be implemented in the foreseeable future. It would require the construction of structures that would prevent or alter water flows into Pakistan, which is a project of years rather than of days. So I don't think anything that has been done till now really and effectively does anything more than send out messages, very strong messages, no doubt, messages that are stronger than earlier language and postures, but by no means an effective response as yet. But this is certainly not. We have assurances coming in from various highest levels of government saying that much more is going to be done.
How worried are you at this point that this, what is a diplomatic row, could escalate into an armed conflict?
I do believe that kinetic measures may be explored. I do not believe that an open war is really envisaged.
But you do believe that it's a possibility that we could see some type of military attacks or strikes shared between the two countries?
That is a definite possibility. Also, they've already initiated certain exercises, air exercises, naval exercises. On the other side, we have, the Pakistan Air Force making low passes over the cities, over their own cities. So there is a sort of ratcheting up of, I would still say, postures. And there would certainly be, if there is action on India's part, there would be retaliation on Pakistan's part. Can this escalate to war? I would suggest that the possibilities are minimal.
What about the possibilities of a political solution sooner rather than later?
None whatsoever.
Okay, that's a very clear answer. Let me ask you before we run out of time, what impact will this current situation, do you think, have on, or what is it having on everyday life in Kashmir?
Kashmir has been a theater of terrorism and high-intensity terrorism for 16 years and a theater of terrorism for 35 years. The people have suffered this and have adapted to this. They've had a better life for a few years. Peace or the semblance of peace had been established. We've had the scale of terrorism coming down very dramatically. But I don't think this is something they will not cope with. However, there is going to be a definite impact because the last few years have seen a tremendous inflow of tourism into the Union territory. And tourism is something that affects the quality of life for a very large proportion of the population. It is a source of income, directly or indirectly, for a large proportion of the population. So if the tourist trade shrinks, and it has grown dramatically over the past years, if it shrinks, that will definitely impact on the lives and livelihoods of the local population.
Ajai Sahni from the Institute for Conflict Management in Delhi. We appreciate your time and your analysis tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.